describe your perspective of the relationship between the personnel director, human resource function, and the goals and objectives of the school.
Well, as far as personnel directors go, we don't have one in like the school system. There's not an HR person, so that sort of falls onto the shoulders of the principal and the superintendent. But I think it's important to have an open line of communication with your superintendent when you're talking about personnel actions or items, because having that conversation with that superintendent is what's going to open up doors for communication with the board attorney to make sure that whatever actions you are doing or not doing are within the rules and regulations. So you've got to have a little bit of a relationship with them.
So a good relationship with superintendent and the board attorney?
Right. Now, I'm not going to say that I know the board attorney personally, but I've met with him a couple of times, and just to make sure that he knows what I'm thinking.
Okay.
The other thing that I have started doing more recently is talking to AEA. Like I've made a connection with our local Alabama Education Association rep, and so I will contact her and say, here are some moves that I'm thinking about making. Help me make sure that I'm in compliance with rules and regulations.
Okay. Yeah, that seems very important too. What are some day-to-day activities for you as the personnel director?
Right. I think the primary thing that I do in terms of personnel would be like interviewing, making recommendations to the superintendent on who will be hired, making recommendations to the superintendent on where people may be placed, and then also conducting evaluations of personnel throughout the year, which for certified staff, we're required to do 2 observations per year, one using the Alabama Teacher Observation Tool and one using the Elliott tool, which is actually a local requirement for our system that's tied to our accreditation.
Okay. To what extent must a personnel director be familiar with the policies, regulations, and state and federal law?
Well, I think if you're going to be making a determination about hiring or termination, you need to be sure that you have a working knowledge of those rules and regulations, and that's when I think it's good to have a resource like AEA, your superintendent, your board attorney, just to make sure that you're following and you're in line with all policies and procedures, because we're a litigious society full of lawyers and judges, and they want to ensure that all policies and procedures, laws, rules, and regulations are followed.
So you don't per se know them by heart, but you have connections to help you.
Right, and of course I keep a policy manual here for the Board of Education, so if we're dealing with someone, especially personnel, I'm going to read through those policies and make sure that we're following them correctly, but I like to be able to call people who, this is part of their wheelhouse, it's what they do, just to make sure that we're in line.
Okay.
I don't think you should ever assume that you know everything.
No, you know what they say about that.
Yeah.
What specific competencies and skills are required in the performance of duty for the position of personnel director?
So I think you have to have good people skills. If you're going to be talking to somebody about, a genuine evaluation of their work, both the good and the not so good, I think you have to be able to communicate that with them in a way that, you don't want to bruise the fruit. You don't want somebody feeling defeated if you want somebody to grow. And so I think having those skills to be able to be honest with people in a way that's not entirely just critical of people.
So really, you gotta have feelings for them.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Compassion, empathy.
Well, I think so.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's I can't separate the humanity from it all, and I just can't. But I would be interested in, an HR class and how they talked about that. How do you deal with that? Do you separate the human side of it? And there are probably times when you have to, but it's not for me.
All right, what are some of this kind of leads right into this question, what are some of the most challenging aspects as the personnel director?
I think dealing with people, and people are imperfect. We are all imperfect by nature. So, when we're all a little bit, we're all a little bit self-conscious, and we all, we sometimes think about our inadequacies and they consume us, and failing to realize that that's part of being a human. And so, when you're talking with somebody about that, I think you gotta really handle that with a way of understanding that, that's not what defines you. That's what we're gonna talk about today, but it's not what defines you. What defines you are the things that you are, that are your gifts and your talents, and that's okay, because everybody's different, everybody's got different things, so.
That's a good point. A lot of people need to hear that. Okay, from a personal perspective, what activities in the human resource function generate the most emotional involvement?
Ooh, anytime somebody's dealing with something that's beyond their control, and here's what I mean by that. As employees, we earn sick leave, sick time, here that you can accumulate and take off when you have illness. But when you see somebody who is suffering from a long-term illness and they're exhaust their days, and then they really want to come back to work and perform their job because they love it, but it's starting to get to a point where the inevitable says that they cannot, but being that person who leads them to that conclusion is a nightmare. And, that's had to happen a couple of times here. And that's very, very hard, to tell somebody. You don't want to, if somebody's dealing with a terminal illness, I don't want to be the one that takes away their hope. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And, specifically, we had a teacher here who passed away from cancer, and she did not want to give up her job, and I did not want her to give up her job. She came to that realization on herself, but walking through that with her was very hard.
I can imagine. Yeah, that would be difficult. Discuss employee disciplinary action procedures in relation to the school.
So if we ever have a case where someone needs to be, if somebody's gonna receive a written reprimand, then I will bring them in here into the office, and I will have typically my assistant principal would be with me, and we will present in writing, what the reprimand is for. Like, for example, if it's being chronically late, and then you will list that on that written reprimand in written form, and then remind them that it is part of their job responsibilities to be at school, at work, on time. And failure to comply with your job responsibilities could lead to a termination. And so I think you want to be specific on there, without backing yourself into a corner. But it's important to have that written documentation if you talk to an employee about a performance issue. And the witness is there. I have a witness, and we all three sign the form, the reprimand, myself, my assistant principal as the witness, and the employee. In the event the employee doesn't want to sign the reprimand, then I will just simply write on that line, refuse to sign.
Okay.
But you'll have documentation that the conversation happened along with a witness.
Yeah. If it's not documented, it didn't happen.
Yes, if it's not written down, it didn't happen.
That's right. Discuss your role in the recruitment, induction, and retention of employees?
Well, we use the Teaching Alabama website where teachers receive notifications that jobs are posted, and that's our primary way of getting the word out that there are employment opportunities here in our school system. We do have some folks from the central office who attend job fairs, career fairs at some of our area colleges and universities in an effort to get some resumes and meet potential candidates for our school system. And then retention, I don't really know that there's anything specifically we do for retention. We try to create a nice positive place for our people to work, where we like to celebrate achievements and, kind of create an environment. But specifically, I don't really know that what we do for retention. I would think that in some systems there may be like financial incentive, but we don't really offer any extra additional financial incentives in our district. We wouldn't have the funds for that.
Just a positive work environment.
Yeah, we try to create that, a place that people want to be.
Discuss aspects of personnel records and confidentiality.
So official records are kept at the central office, and there's if I do any kind of reprimands, I do have a filing cabinet in here in my office that is locked. I'm the only one who has a key to that, so I do keep some documentation here. The other place that documentation is kept is on file through Teacher Effectiveness, which is a state program, and that's where you house evidence, job-based evidence, job performance-based evidence, where teachers have pursued professional development, where observations have taken place, and that's stored yearly through the State Department. And it's rare that, fortunately, it's rare that written reprimands are issued in Cherokee County schools.
That's good. How can the district's recruitment, interview, and selection process improve student academic achievement?
Well, I think you want to make sure that you're getting qualified people. You want to make sure that when you're posting jobs and you're receiving applicants, that whoever is responsible for selecting those applicants, like in this particular case, I look at the applications that are put in. You want to make sure that the person is certified through a college or university, has their teaching certificate. You want to make sure that you're putting somebody in that classroom who's qualified. And I think you can do that through your interview selection process, and then the interview process is when you kind of learn about somebody's personality and whether or not you think that they would be a good fit for your community and your school.
So you have specific interview questions that help you to determine that?
Yes, I do, and some of those are related to their performance in the classroom, and some of them are related to their specific personality. Things like when you ask them about previous work experience, I like to ask them to tell me about their coworkers, their current coworkers, and I want to hear what they have to say about their coworkers, because it can give you some insight into whether or not they are able to work with people. Because if you're working here at Center Elementary School, there's 89 of us here as adults. That's a lot of people with a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different experiences. We need people who can sort through that and are easy to work with. So I like to kind of talk to people about that and hear what they have to say. Also ask people about any of their work that involves self-sacrifice. I always ask people to say, tell me the last thing that you did for somebody and you expected nothing in return, just to learn a little bit about their ability to care for others or self-sacrifice, because there's a lot of that that you need not just in education. I think that's a good human quality, to know that it's not all about you, it's about us.
Have you not really perfected your interview questions, but have they evolved over time and changed?
Yes, I would never say perfected, but they do evolve.
Mhm.
They do evolve. And some of the questions may be adjusted based on what their resume may tell me. So I may wanna know a little bit about their work experience. You know, ask them some questions about, you know, where they've been, you know, why they leave, you know, how they like it. So sometimes that resume might can dictate some of your questions that you ask.
Awesome. All right. What about, are there any trends in hiring that you have seen?
Not really. I mean, not that I can think of. I did notice, I guess during the pandemic, when staffing sort of became inflated because of additional funding that was gonna run out, the applicant pool did become a little bit more shallow. But again, I think it was because there were more jobs than there were people available. But what I started noticing this spring is that applicant pool is growing again. But I think that's due to the loss of some of that federal funding that has now brought staffs more back in line to what they have traditionally been.
Well, that's all I've got. I really appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You gave me a lot of information.
All right.
All right.
Enough to write something on?
Oh, yeah, definitely.